The Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs, they faced each other for a second time in about 3, 4 days. They played on Saturday. They lost a tough game to Spurs. They met again on Monday night, but this time the Houston Rockets came out with a victory. Katz, thank you for joining to talk about the Houston Rockets. And they almost blew it, but it took for a guy like Fred VanVleet to hit a big 3-pointer, a guy who's been struggling all night with a 3-point shot. He hit a dagger right there in the fourth quarter to make it 104 to 99. But how about Jalen Green? I mean, the way he's been performing this season has been phenomenal. He's playing like an all-star so far this season for this Houston Rockets team. But this was a win that they needed to get, especially after a tough loss on Saturday against the San Antonio Spurs. So, what's your reaction of last night's game?
Well, they almost blew it, but it was much needed after Saturday night's loss. Saturday night, they were down big and almost mounted an incredible comeback, but they fell short. But Jalen Green last night was incredible. He dropped 36 points on 50% shooting. Efficiency and inconsistency was something that going into the season, a lot of people were questioning. Could he be that consistent scorer who could shoot above or at 50% from the field and maybe be a high 30%, low 40% shooter from deep? And he did that. He shot 7 of 13 last night from three. And I think the Rockets team, they're kind of still finding their footing right now. This is the second year of Ime Udoka being their head coach. And in a game against the Spurs where you really had to worry about Victor Wembanyama, they only held him to 14 points on 6 of 14 shooting. I mean, he grabbed 20 rebounds, but the biggest thing was kind of limiting San Antonio's offensive opportunities early. And Houston came out, they came out of the gate firing. And I think it was a huge step, particularly for Jalen Green. It was a much needed win.
It was definitely a much needed win for the Houston Rockets. This is a team, and we've spoken about this before, that this team on paper, they look really good. They could really make a run to the playoffs. They have a good head coach right in front of them, a coach that went to the finals with the Celtics in 2022. Him coming to Houston was definitely a fresh start that he needed because of, everything that happened. So we don't have to get into that. You know what I'm talking about. But you have a team that has a good head coach that challenges players. You had Fred VanVleet, who brings championship experience, who's now a vocal leader for this team. To have a combination of veteranship and a good head coach, plus you have a good defensive player in Brooks, who is fearless. He's not afraid of defending anybody. He can run his mouth a little too much, but in every team you need a guy. You need a guy who's a pest. You need a guy like that on every team. As long as it doesn't cost the team, victories. But I like Brooks, I like Van Fleet and what he brings to the table. Jalen Green, I feel like he has the potential to be the number one guy on that team if he continues this momentum. So my question to you is, do you think that based on what you're seeing so far, do you think that he can be that guy, that number one guy for Houston?
I don't know if Jalen Green could be that number one guy. I mean, we've seen a lot of scoring surges, but I think he works so much better as a number two option. I think that Alperen Şengün is their number one option. I think he's their star because he can do it all. He, he's a 6'11 center who can score, rebound, and facilitate. So for Jalen Green, I think he works a lot better as the number two option. I don't know if the Rockets can be that playoff team with him taking a high volume of shots, just because of what we've seen over the past, three, now coming up to year four of his NBA career. I don't know if I see him taking, unless he takes a major step this year, I don't know if he can be that number one guy. And I think for Houston, running their offense through guys like Şengün and Van Vliet, who are the primary ball handlers, I think that worked so well last year. It's the reason that the Rockets went from, this 20 win team 2 years ago to 41 and 41 last year. They almost made the play in. So I think if they continue to run through Şengün and Van Vliet and Green gets his opportunities as the number two option, I think that will result in Houston taking that next step and becoming a playoff team.
This is my final question for you, and this is no right or wrong answer, it's just your opinion. What do you think the Rockets are missing? Do you feel like they have it all, or do you think that they're missing some pieces from their bench? Um, because Jalen Green, he can score, but he can also defend as well. He shows capability that he can defend. So what do you think they're missing? They have leadership, they have a good head coach. Clearly, they have some scoring, but do you think that they're missing some depth from their bench, or do you feel that they have it there, they just have to get better at it?
I think Houston has everything right now. From what I've seen through the first four games, they struggled a little bit, but they have all the pieces because you have your starting lineup is pretty complete. You have your former all-star Fred Van Vliet, then Jalen Green, and then you have some role players in Dylan Brooks and Jabari Smith Jr. who are taking good steps. Alperen Şengün is obviously coming to his own as a star. And then the bench, I think Houston's one of the deepest teams in the league. You got guys like Cam Whitmore, Steven Adams, Reed Shepherd, Amen Thompson. That's a pretty complete bench compared to the rest of the association. And I think the biggest issue is distributing the minutes because I think there are too many cooks in the kitchen, meaning that Houston has a lot of guys that can contribute off the bench, and it's just a matter of finding the right footing, finding which lineups work and which don't. Reed Shepherd hasn't played too much. He played 3 minutes last night, and he couldn't put up the only stat he put up was an assist. I think you need to give him a bit more of an opportunity because the reason that Houston brought Shepard in was to fix those offensive struggles, but he hasn't gotten much of an opportunity to show off anything. And then the second, and what I think is the biggest thing, is that the Rockets need to start Amen Thompson because that guy, I think, I say it all the time, he's the Swiss Army knife, perhaps of the NBA, because he can score, he can rebound, and he can defend. I mean, that guy in his second year has already been taking that step and he's taken that challenge of guarding some of the tougher players. And I think if Udoka can see that and he can maybe give Thompson a bit more looks, maybe over a guy like Dylan Brooks or Jabari Smith Jr., then I think Houston is really going to take that leap. But I think it's more of just figuring out which lineups work. I don't know if it's necessarily a personnel thing.
They definitely are one of the deepest teams in the league. I like Reece Shepherd. Reece Shepherd is one of those rookies that I want him to succeed, and he was my picked prediction in terms of winning Rookie of the Year. So far, he hasn't gotten playing time. I hope they give him a shot because there's just something about him that I like. I have a good feeling that he's gonna stand out from that draft class. But man, oh man, if you're Houston, you gotta be excited, you gotta be lucky, but you gotta be careful. You can't drop the ball. You gotta play your cards right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's just for a guy like Shepard, who I thought was gonna I thought he was also gonna come in and have an immediate impact. It's unfortunate that he's not getting enough minutes, but I think as the season goes on, his playing time is gonna increase. I think they just might want to, kind of ease him in a little bit. But yeah, they have a really deep team. I mean, they went out and got a guy like Steven Adams to fix their depth problem at center. And so far, he's been pretty efficient for them. I think Houston has a really bright future going forward. And for them to get out of this rebuild so early after trading James Harden just 3 years ago, it's pretty impressive to see what they've done.